يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Today I want to talk to you about a very important element, and that is to do with leaving a legacy behind when we are gone. I want to say to you this, that a leader is not remembered for what they possessed, what they owned, kind of house they had, whether they were beautiful or powerful. A leader is remembered for one thing and one thing only, and that is what contribution did they make. Now I want to say to you two things, and I want you to remember them. Number one, it is the nature of extraordinary goals to inspire extraordinary effort. I'm going to say that again. It's in the nature of extraordinary goals to inspire extraordinary effort. And the second one is that a dream is supposed to be impractical. There is no such thing as a practical dream. A practical dream is an oxymoron. Remember these two things. I want to tell you three stories, because stories is a good way of understanding what we want to say. The first story is about this man who bought a first-class train ticket. He sat in the train in the right seat, but when the ticket collector came to check his ticket, the ticket collector threw him out of the train. When the train stopped at the next station, the man actually pushed him out, and this man fell on the platform. But you know, a strange thing happened. When the man hit the platform, a dream was born. And that dream was to free his nation from slavery. But you know what is strange about that dream? That dream was born when the man could not even guarantee his own personal freedom. A very impractical dream, a very extraordinary goal. Do you know who this man was? This man was Ghandi. Tell you a second story. There was a man who sat in a prison cell on an island which is a rock in the middle of the ocean for 27 years. Today we know it was 27 years, but when this man was in that prison cell, he didn't know it was going to be 27 years. This rock in the island is called Robben Island. It's off the coast of Durban, off the coast of Cape Town in South Africa. And the man was President Nelson Mandela. Today we know that this strange dream of his came true, and South Africa became free. I'll tell you a third story. And this is about a man who was in his 20s when he had a fall and he broke his neck and became a paraplegic. He became paralyzed from his neck downwards. After that he went to Al-Azhar, he became an alim, he was Hafiz Quran, he came back to his country, he set up an organization to help the oppressed people of his country, to heal the sick, to feed the poor, to build houses for those whose homes had been destroyed by the invaders, by the occupiers of his land. And for this work, the reward that he got was he was imprisoned many times. He was tortured because it's very easy to torture a man who's paralyzed who can't fight back. He was put in prison, and he was released, he was caught again, put in prison, and so on. And this continued. And then on the 22nd of March 2004, when the man was 67 years old, and when he was coming out of the masjid or being wheeled out in a wheelchair from the masjid after Fajr prayer, they murdered him, they killed him. So you know the story. Ask yourself, what does it take to kill a paralyzed man in a wheelchair? It took 3 Hellfire missiles fired from an Apache helicopter to kill one old man in a wheelchair. And you know why? Because dreamers don't die easy, and dreams never die. And as I am sitting here talking to you, I'm thinking of the dream of this man of freeing his land from slavery, and Allah knows best if this dream will ever come true, but the dream lives on and inspires people to continue to work to make it come true. Once again, a completely unrealistic dream and a completely extraordinary goal which inspires people to make extraordinary effort. I want to ask you therefore, what is your dream? What do you want to achieve? What are your goals? You know, it's a strange thing. We all start in the same place. We all start as idealists. Ask any school child, ask any small kid in the school, what do you want to be, and he will tell you big things. And then, as we go on in life, we, within quotes, start to grow wiser because life hits us, and we want to do idealistic things, and life hits us. So gradually the idealism comes down, and we become optimistic, and we still believe that, well, maybe some things are wrong, but I think I can achieve something good. And then life hits you again, and from an optimistic you become a realist, you become realistic, and then from realistic, because life does not stop hitting you, it goes on hitting you all the time. So from being an idealist, you become an optimist. From being an optimist, you become a realist. From being a realist, you become a pessimist. And then if you don't stop yourself from being a pessimist, you become a cynic. And cynics are fashionable because cynics make funny statements. So they become very popular in society. And then you get dragged down to the final bottom of the barrel, which is indifferent. Doesn't matter what's happening, I don't care. Now, but no matter how cynical or indifferent you become, that original flame of idealism does not die. And that's the reason why if you talk to people and if you say idealistic things, usually they will push back. People will tell you are a fool. I mean, what kind of rubbish is this? I mean, you haven't seen life. You have no experience. You're talking about all these great things. You want to free the world. You want to change the world. You want to free your nation. This doesn't happen. Look at history. They push back. You know why they push back? They push back not because they believe that you are wrong. They push back because they look into your eyes. And in your eyes, they see the reflection of what they were like one day. It reminds them that one day I was like this. And then they look at themselves and they ask themselves, what have I done to myself? How come today, when I hear the same things, I am afraid? So they take the easy way out, or what they think is the easy way out, and that easy way out they think is to make you shut up. So if they can drag you down to their level, then everything is right with the world, even though nothing is right with the world. But you know the thing about idealists, is idealists don't care what people say. They go on with their idealistic talk and they go on trying to achieve idealistic things. And then a strange thing happens. And that strange thing is, the same people who are pushing back now start to listen. And then they start to follow. And then they start to support. Because that single little spark of idealism that remained in the heart now starts to gather some strength. And then lo and behold, it becomes a blazing fire which drives away the darkness of oppression, the darkness of ignorance from society. And that's why it is very important never to lose your idealism. I am a completely shameless idealist, totally shameless idealist. I don't care what anybody says. I believe in things. I believe that we can change the world. I believe that we can become standard bearers of Islam. And I don't care whether anyone agrees with me or not. This is what I believe, this is what I try to do, and this is what I will try to do continuously until the day I die. And if you see me slip, I want you to remind me about this and say that, Sheikh, one day you said this, now how come you have slipped? And that's the point I want to say, that how can you be an idealist and continue to be an idealist all your life? Because if you lose that, if you slip down and you become cynical or indifferent, believe me, then your life is really not worth living. Because, what's the point of living a life where you make no impact on anybody? So the second question I want to ask you is, what are your ideals? I want to tell you a story. It's a story about Washington, D.C. And the story is back in the time of the first Iraq war. And the story goes that there was this man who used to come and stand in front of the White House holding a candle, a lighted candle in his hand. And he would stand there for a couple of hours in the night, and then he would go back. Now the White House guards got used to seeing him every day. He would come and stand in front of the White House with his candle in his hand, protesting against what was happening in Iraq. The boycott of Iraq, the fact that 500,000 children under the age of 5 died because of the boycott. And there was this lone white American man who was protesting against that. So he was standing there with his candle. Now one evening, it was blustery and cold, and there was a drizzle, there was rain. It was bitterly bad, nasty evening. And yet when the time came, there was this man in a raincoat with his candle in his hand, trying to hold an umbrella at the same time, shielding the flame of the candle from the breeze so that it wouldn't go out. Now when this man came and stood there, the story goes that the guard of the White House, he just had enough of this. So he came out of his bunker and he said to this man, he said, "What are you trying to do?" He said, "What are you doing here? I mean, this horrible evening. Why are you not in your house? What are you trying to achieve by standing here holding this candle?" He said, "Do you think you can change them? Why are you doing this? Do you think you can change them?" You know the answer of that man in this story? The man says, he smiled at the guard and he said, "My brother, I do not do this to change them." He says, "I do this so that they will not change me." And I think that is the key. The key is that we work to differentiate ourselves and to give the topmost quality, not because the customer demands it, not because the audience demands it, not because anyone else wants it, but because we are the ones giving that. We do it because of who we are. We don't do it because of who they are. And that's the point I want to ask you, is what do you stand for? Finally, my last story, I want to tell you about a true story written by a very famous writer called Lauren Isley. Lauren Isley said that he went for a holiday to a beach resort, and that night there was a terrible storm. And he said the next morning when I came out of my cottage and I was walking on the beach, I saw the entire beach was littered with debris from the sea. And in this debris were literally thousands of starfish. And he said, as I was walking along the beach, making my way through the debris, he said, in the distance, I saw a young boy who appeared to be doing something like a dance. He would bend down to the sand and he would get up and throw something into the sea. And he said, I wondered, what is this kid doing? He said, when I got close to the kid, I realized that he was picking up starfish and throwing them into the sea. So Lord Isley said that, I said to this kid, I said, look, why are you doing this? So this kid had a starfish in his hand. He said, you know, sir, I'm throwing this into the sea because if it is left on the sand in the sun, it dries out and it dies. So I'm throwing it into the sea so that it will live. So Lord Isley says, you know, I laughed at the boy and I said to him, I said, kid, do you know something? He said, just look around, turn around and look behind you. He said, just see how many million starfish are there on this one beach. Now think about this. There are how many millions of square miles of beach are there in the world? How many storms happen on those beaches, in those seas in the year? How many zillions of starfish do you think are thrown up on those beaches every year? You are one kid, you're one little kid. You are throwing this starfish into the sea. He said, what difference does it make? Lord Isley said, the kid looked at me, he looked at the starfish in his hand, he threw it into the sea, and he said, sir, it made a difference to that one. And Lord Isley said, I walked away. I walked for a long time. I turned around, I came back, and he said that kid and I threw starfish into the sea for a long time. And I want to end with this. I want to ask you, what difference do you want to make? And that's where I want to close. What difference do you want to make? Thank you very much. Jazakallahu khair. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik. ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك اللهم ونتوب إليك.